Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Torin here, and welcome to the fourth entry in our Tournament Cast series between Viking Cat and Soothsayer from the Total Warhammer Cup. So again, thank you to Shetland Apache for sending me these replays. It's definitely been a lot of fun casting them, and I've learned quite a bit myself. So let's jump right into the army compositions and have some fun. So over here, the Bretonnian army actually looks pretty diverse. Definitely some cool units going on. We got some heavy cav in the back. It looks like we also have some Royal Pegasus Knights, so we're in for a good time here. But in the front line, it looks like he does have some Battle Pilgrims, which I actually like quite a bit. A lot of people just spam Foot Squires against the Vampire counts, assuming, hey, I'm going to be fighting a Graveguard-centric front line most of the time, and they don't have enough armor piercing to really deal with them. Battle Pilgrims, actually, they do hit pretty hard with 35 weapon strength, but their armor piercing is extremely low. It's actually only 5. But still, against Cryptors, against Skeletons, against Zombies, they can cut them to shreds pretty quickly. And guys, they have incredible leadership. It's actually 88, and they're not near the Grail Reliquae. So that's 88 unbuffed by the Grail Reliquae. And you can see the Foot Squires over here actually have 94, but they are getting the plus 16 from that Grail Reliquae, plus the leadership in the center. So I think Foot Squires are actually like, their base leadership is more around like 60 or 65 or something like that, whereas the Battle Pilgrims is quite a bit higher. So they make a very, very good kind of anchor in your front line against the Vampire counts, and they are also immune to psychology, which is really, really nice. So the terror mechanics and all that kind of funny business is not going to affect them. So aside from that, it looks like he does have 2 groups of Foot Squires, which again, I think is a staple against Vampire counts. I don't think you should bring a whole front line. I actually really, really like what Soothsayer did here with kind of mixing it up. But the Foot Squires are going to be pretty effective against Graveguard. It will be a bit of an atrocious trade, as Graveguard do have an anti-infantry bonus as well, but still the Foot Squires put up a great fight and do very, very well. So he has 2 groups of those, and in the middle, it looks like he does have some men-at-arms with polearms. And these guys are a very, very good cheap answer to Blood Knights, to Cryptors, and things like that, and are just kind of a jack of all trades for how incredibly cheap they are. So very, very good stuff. As far as his leadership goes, he does have a Grail Reliquae, which is going to kind of buff his whole center line here. He does have the Fey Enchantress, and it looks like he has an Awakening of the Wood, most likely to trigger Earthbloom. But Awakening of the Wood actually does have a slowing effect of 48. So if you're able to catch some Blood Knights or some other high value units with those and maybe get an advantageous jump on them, it could work out pretty well. But again, most people just use it to trigger the Earthbloom because it only costs 6 winds of magic. So he does, of course, have the Favor of the Fae and all those other goodies as well. He has some Royal Pegasus Knights in the back line, which I think are just MVPs against the Vampire counts. They do magic damage. They have incredibly good melee attack. Not the highest melee defense, but usually you're going to kind of use them to, you know, rear charge into something or support a unit that's already fighting. And they have 61 weapon strength with a serious anti-large bonus. So if we take a look right here, the anti-large bonus is actually plus 12, so they can just really just dumpster large units like Corpse Carts, Mortis Engines. If they get a good jump on some Blood Knights, they can do some good damage. Just such a powerful unit, and guys, they actually do have Living Saints, so they never get tired. They're not affected by fatigue, which is great. So aside from that, he does have some Mounted Yeoman Archers in the front line, which I like quite a bit. You know, again, great for focusing down Cryptors, good against, although you don't see a lot of Cryptors against Bretonnia from my experience, because Bretonnia just has so many spears and anti-large units and some decent missiles that can really pepper the Cryptors, but still, having some Mounted Yeoman gives you some flexibility and some pretty good harass there. Aside from that, this has kind of become the new meta for Bretonnia in a lot of matchups. They just kind of bring 2 Grail Guardians, which are basically, they're just tanks. These guys have 56 melee defense, incredible armor, 120 armor. They do have shields, and they just last forever. If you put these guys in the front line, like a lot of people don't use these guys like traditional cav. They won't run them around the back and try and pressure. They just charge them right up the front and have them just stand and fight with the infantry the entire time, because they are so incredibly hard to kill, especially when supported by a Fey Enchantress and supported by the leadership buff of the Grail Reliquae. So that's pretty much it for the Bretonnian army. For the Vampire counts who are advancing up the hill, he does have some Graveguard in the front line, mixed in with Graveguard with great weapons, who will do a little bit better against the Foot Squires than the Graveguard. Although actually, I would actually be interested in testing that, because these guys do have higher melee defense of 36 versus the 25 of the great weapons. So might need some testing on that. But still, I like the diversity here, having some armor piercing. Because, I mean, honestly, if these guys have to fight the Grail Guardians, these great weapons will actually come in pretty handy there. So aside from that, he does have 2 Blood Knights, which is a pretty heavy investment, but the Blood Knights, again, anti-large, very, very durable in sustained combat. They have a great charge bonus of 76, so quite a bit better than those Grail Guardians, and just a solid unit all around, especially against Bretonnia. So, for example, if the Pegasus Knights are able to land somewhere, if the Blood Knights can get a good rear charge of them, they'll tear them to shreds incredibly quickly. Looks like he does have a blank Necromancer here with no abilities, and let's see, in the back, it looks like he does have some Skeleton Spears in the flank, which is incredible against Bretonnia. You know, against this particular build, this looks like a very headstrong Bretonnian build that's just going to kind of charge right up the pipe and maybe protect the flank with some spears in the back line. So they're not going to be as good at kind of protecting, but still, you know, a decent choice nonetheless. Looks like he does also have the Red Duke with, it looks like he has Von Hell's Dance Macabre. He does have Invocation of Heck and Raised Dead, of course. Here's another Necromancer over here that's kind of stripped down of his abilities. It looks like he does have the Master of Undeath, which I believe does provide some healing and some other good buffs. Let's actually take a look just to kind of clarify this once and for all. So it does provide, yeah, replenish the hit points of combatants in that range around him. So pretty nice stuff. An additional group of Graveguard and a second group of Blood Knights. So guys, we're definitely in for a cockfight, and let the games begin. So the Vampire Counts are advancing up the hill, and it's just going to be a huge battle right here. You can see the Grail Guardians are actually posturing up, like I mentioned, in the center of this line. So usually what they do is they just kind of charge in here, but it looks like the Blood Knights are actually coming in pretty hot. They're going to charge right to these guys, and this is actually not a terrible engagement for the Blood Knights. They'll do pretty well against the Grail Guardians, but again, the Grail Guardians have heavy armor, but these battle programs are definitely not going to have a good time. So a lot of, the meta is changing in terms of the way people use Cav. A lot of times they just charge them right down the center, but man, this is a cool scenic shot. You get to see the Blood Knights coming down, the Pegasus Knights flying above, but if the Pegasus Knights are able to come up and around to just like lance these guys in the back, that could be a very dicey situation. But you can see in the back line, it looks like these Grail Guardians are a little bit trapped up, and the Blood Knights are just going to get a devastating charge into these peasants and into these foot squires. So very, very good stuff so far. That was just an epic introduction to this battle. So over here, you can see the Blood Knights do penetrate, but guys, they took a bit of damage, but they also gave quite a bit of damage to those battle pilgrims, but still, the Pegasus Knights are just going to circumvent these guys, and you can also see some spears coming into the flank and just getting a brutal trap. So these Blood Knights are in really, really bad shape here, but they do get the Undeath Resurgent as well as the Red Fury to help them fight back, and he's definitely going to need Invocation from the Heck, and you can see it does go off, as well as Von Hells. So a very, very pitched fight here in the middle with a lot of Cav. You can see the Blood Knights and these Graveguard are kind of pushing through, and these battle pilgrims are just getting torn to shreds on the flank, but these Grail Guardians are just so resolute. They're just standing and fighting. They're also getting the Earth Blood. They're definitely coming out a little bit ahead, I would say, because you can see these Blood Knights are down to 26 models and are already closing in on their healing cap. So very, very tough stuff. I would really like to see these Skeleton Spears pushed up in the middle of the line. So over here, the Mounted Yeomen just kind of skirmishing a little bit. This is, again, going to be a pretty favorable matchup for the Graveguard here. They'll be able to beat these battle programs back, no problem. You can see they're down to 65 models against the 84 of these Graveguard, and that's even with the Missile Fire of these Mounted Yeomen. So a pretty advantageous situation over there, and you can see the Necromancer just kind of tighting to his flanks. But these Varix Reavers actually did miss them earlier, but the Varix Reavers are coming in hot and just kind of riding down some of these peasants in the back line, which is a great use. And guys, they're really excellent regiment of renown. They do have regeneration, pretty good against infantry. They do have a really good charge bonus for how cheap they are, and they're just kind of riding these peasants down, and actually you can see they're wavering even though they're still at like full health. So looks like he does pull them out right now. I'm not sure if he's going to rear charge here, and it looks like he might. So he's going to come in and rear charge some of these peasants and just get a great charge on these guys. So very well played there using his Cav, and this is just a wild battle to say the least. So you can see the Pegasus Knights actually pulled back up in the air. Just a very atrocious fight here in the front line. The Necromancer supporting. You can see that periodic healing is getting from the Master. I always forget what that ability is called, but I think it's called like the Master of Undeath or something. But yes, it is the Master of the Dead. So over here you can see the Red Duke is fighting, but those Royal Pegasus Knights get a great rear charge and just come in here and knock a bunch of the undead troops. And they do have that anti-large bonus, and you can see the battlefield. It's just littered with the dead of the Blood Knights. They're not having a good time in here. There's a ton of anti-large, and even though the Grail Guardians like aren't meant against like large units, they're just so durable. They have very good combat stats. Granted, their weapon strength is somewhat low, but their melee defense is really high. So they're not going to take a ton of damage from Blood Knights who don't have the best armor piercing. So you can see the Red Duke has been just fighting tooth and nail, summoning zombies over here, but unfortunately, guys, he doesn't really have any support anymore. All of his Blood Knights around him have faltered, and the Bretonnian line is kind of collapsing a little bit over here to these Graveguard with great weapons. So the Red Duke is definitely going to need the support of these troops to continue fighting, because this situation is starting to look very dicey. So you can see the Vampire Count's line over here did collapse a little bit, and you can see these Mounted Yeomen continue to ride around and troll. They only actually have 4 kills, but still, any pressure on the back line is going to be pretty nice, and they could even start trying to snipe out this Necromancer if they wanted to. But you can see over here, the Necromancer and these Graveguard are still fighting. They're in perfect health, but Bretonnia does have these Grail Guardians. They have 35 models here. It looks like they have some spears. They have some Graveguard fighting over here for the Vampire Counts. And let's go ahead and take an overhead view of things. But the Fey Enchantress, guys, is so good in these type of atrocious battles, especially when you're using these Grail Guardians. But a very nice zombie summon being coming up behind these peasants and spearmen at arms who are still confident. So there must be a Grail Reliquary nearby, and it looks like there is. So the Grail Reliquary, if that wasn't here, these Spearmen at Arms would just be out of here most likely, because they're getting a rear charge penalty right now, and these Grail Guardians are still confident despite being surrounded and having taken a ton of damage. So just a true testament to not only their base leadership, but also to the power of the Grail Reliquary, which essentially makes them immune to, well, it does make them immune to psychology, which is very powerful. So you can see some Pegasus Knights. They actually took quite a bit of damage from that Vampire Counts engagement from the Blood Knights initially, but still they're riding around, and they're not that close to their healing cap, so one more Earthblade could really bring them back in the battle. You can also see these Peasant Bowmen getting a very healthy firing line over here, but the Red Duke is being chased by these Pegasus Knights. They're just going in hard for him, but the Red Duke is very quick and has pretty good defensive stats himself with 110 armor, but man, these guys are just on the hunt. They're incredibly fast, and guys, they don't get tired. If you look at their stats right here, they're fresh, and they did get the favor of the Fae, so very good stuff here. The fight continuing to go. A good zombie summon right here from the Red Duke, kind of trapping down a lot of these Pegasus Knights, so great micro from both players, but you can see this very healthy group of Grail Guardians coming in and getting a good surround, and it looked like the Red Duke was trying to chase down the Fey Enchantress, as he did use LC on him to lower his speed by 48%, and he's continuing to just go in hard. He gets a pretty good charge there. He does some solid damage, but the Fan Enchantress is surprisingly durable, especially with her healing capability. So, but she's not alone. She does not stand alone. These guys are coming in pretty hot. These Girl Guardians and these Pegasus Knights are just continuing to cycle charge this Red Duke over here. So over here on this end, we do have the Necromancer and some Graveguard fighting off these Foot Squires, and it looks like the Graveguard are going to win this engagement. And like I mentioned earlier, they do have 38 weapon strength, which is very good, and they also do have a true anti-infantry bonus. And what I mean by true is, if you guys take a look here, they actually have 30 weapon strength, 8 armor piercing, and then a true bonus versus infantry of +8. So very, very good stuff here, but you can see the Grail Guardians coming in and just whomping on them. So that one rear charge just immediately kind of evened out that fight, and is probably going to save these Foot Squires from routing here. So very, very good stuff. Very awesome cav play from both players this game. You can see some zombies being summoned here, but the Necromancer and the Undead Forces are starting to just suffer attrition. You can see the Graveguard with great weapons are just fighting tooth and nail against these Grail Guardians, actually bringing them down quite low and getting 62 kills. So you can see they turn around trying to assassinate this Fan Enchantress, but she is very, very fleet on her feet, and you can see these Grail Guardians are going to come in and just support her. So these guys are just absolute beasts, and I found them to be very, very good in the Vampire Counts matchup. So they're kind of beating down these Graveguard right here with the great weapons. Over here, you can see there's a few Vampire Counts troops left. There's some zombies, but for the most part, the Graveguard lines are crumbling. Even the Sternsmen are down to about 10 or 11 models, and it looks like that might be all she wrote for the Vampire Counts player, though he does have the Red Duke kind of still alive. And is there any troops off in the periphery? It doesn't look like it, and you can see there's still some healthy Pegasus Knights. He actually got a really good concave, too. I like how, like, after the battle developed, he got his Peasant Bowmen out here on both sides and was able to just create a healthy firing line, just use them the entire time. Like, I feel like they got pressured a little bit by Barracks Reavers, but I think the Barracks Reavers actually got taken out by the Pegasus Knights. So yeah, that was pretty much it. There's some zombies left here, and you can see the Red Duke is going down, so we'll go ahead and fast forward through the last of this battle, but just some zombies left basically, but very, very well played to both players. That was a great fight. That intro cinematic was so incredibly cool with that charge with the Blood Knights coming in, but you could see the Blood Knights just got heavily outclassed, and they kind of charged a little bit aggressively into the concave and got surrounded by spears, and then the Pegasus Knights just came in and flanked them, and they just kind of took too much damage. Though we did have the Invocation of Nehek to salvage them a little bit, I would have liked to see a kind of a more solidified Vampire Counts front line advance, and then use the Blood Knights to pressure the flanks, and kind of draw the Grail Guardians into open field battle, where I think they would have had more of an advantage. So again, very, very well played to Soothsayer as well as Viking Cat 91. It was a great battle, and that was the 4th and final entry in that Tournament Cast series. So also thank you to Shetland Apache for sending me these replays, and hopefully I'll get some more soon and cast them for you guys. So have an excellent night, everyone, and take care.